I'm now joined by another special guest. Richard Haass is former top American diplomat and someone who was the president of the Council for Foreign Relations. Appreciate your joining us, Mr. Haass. Complete confusion in India over just what Donald Trump wants to do. His comments are being seen in some way to be increasingly anti-India. How do you see it? Is Donald Trump simply upending the rules-based world order, disrupting it, even alienating a friendly country like India?
Well, there's two ways to answer your question. One is, in general, Donald Trump is in certain ways upending the world order that existed. He is of the view, not one I share, but he is of the view that in many ways it has not served American interests. He is questioning in many cases the value of certain relationships with friends and allies. Mm-hmm. So all of that affects our partners in Europe, in Asia, elsewhere in the world, including India. Mm-hmm. Then I think there are some special concerns about India. There has long been some frustration over India's economic policy, above all its protectionism, frustrations for American firms trying to do business in India. There's obviously also a degree of unhappiness with the closeness of India's relations with Russia, India's purchases of Russian energy. So I think, again, you have both of these forces at play, a general questioning of American foreign policy, or many aspects of American foreign policy, and then in addition, certain questions or issues that are India specific.
You know, you're describing, Mr. Haass, frustrations on the part of the Trump administration, but look at it from India's point of view. When the US president goes on record saying India is a dead economy and almost threatens punitive measures, penalties if India doesn't stop oil trade with Russia, India, in my view, rightly believes this is an infringement on our strategic autonomy. So what really seems to be happening, Mr. Haass, is an element, I wouldn't say breakdown, but certainly mistrust that's creeping in on both sides. India, too, has every right to be frustrated with Donald Trump.
I wish I could disagree with you, but I can't. I thought that language used by the American president was unfortunate, and treating India and Russia in the same sentence, I think, is not fair to India. But I think your larger point is that both sides now approach this bilateral relationship, the United States and India, both capitals, both countries, with a degree of suspicion. Mm-hmm. Oddly enough, this reminds me of the way things were several decades ago. Before the United States and India built a more modern post-Cold War relationship. And what seems to be happening now over the last 6 months is some of the old mutual questioning or skepticism, a lack of confidence, a lack of trust has re-entered this relationship. And I think the challenge for both capitals is to try to figure out a way to work through it, because I'm one of those who continues to believe a close, not just economic, but strategic relationship between the United States and India is in the interests of both countries. So I would like to see things return to a better footing, but I don't take issue with your point. Things have clearly taken a step backwards between us.
But if you were to then advise New Delhi and the Modi government, how should the Modi government now deal with a Donald Trump at the moment? In your view, what's the best way forward?
Well, again, it's not my position to advise the government in India or any other government about how to deal with the United States. But I would simply say that India needs to look hard at the two issues that give the United States, not just Donald Trump, but the United States, structural concern. One is its policy in terms of access of American firms to the Indian market. Are there areas where India can do more, is willing to do more, in order to reduce some of the barriers of entry and operation? And then secondly, I think India's purchasing of Russian oil is truly unfortunate. I think I understand why. A discounted price, given India's economic and energy situation, I understand the argument. But what Russia is doing is a fundamental threat to world order, and what it's doing in Ukraine is simply outrageous. Mm-hmm. So I would very much hope that India would rethink its policy of importing these large quantities of Russian oil. I think it's truly unfortunate, and I would hope that India would look for other ways to meet its energy needs.
You know, that's easier said than done, of course, Mr. Haass. But there is also the China factor here. Do you believe China is the elephant in the room, that for the longest time there was a sense that Washington wanted to use India as a bulwark against China, but the US president now continues to negotiate with China? How do you see that playing out? Is this all, in a way, part of a greater game that's being played out at the moment?
I don't know if it's the elephant in the room, but it's obviously a consideration, and I take your point. One of the arguments for a closer U.S. relationship with India, that it strengthened both countries vis-a-vis China. We didn't need for India to become an ally. We weren't asking India to become an ally, but the fact that India was a robust democracy with close ties to the West, militarily stronger than it was, that would be a strategic consideration for China. Mm-hmm. And the more strategic considerations that China had, I thought it was better for both the United States and India. Mm-hmm. We didn't want China to feel it had a free hand, whether from the U.S. point of view against Taiwan, and from the Indian point of view against India itself. Mm-hmm. So I thought that there was a certain strategic logic to a closer U.S.-Indian relationship. I don't know now what it is that President Trump is thinking of with China. Recently, there's been some signals, some of which I'm comfortable with, some of which I'm not. I worry about what seems to be some of the distancing from the United States and Taiwan, and I think there's a big question mark as to what Mr. Trump what is it he seeks from China in the way of a closer, say, economic relationship, and what he might be willing to give to China in order to bring that about. But this, to me, is the kind of thing India and the United States ought to be talking about. This is what strategic dialogues are all about. I think both India and the United States are better off when we are, how would I put it, we are on the same page when it comes to dealing with China, or at least a similar page.
Let me ask you a final question. How would you then describe, Mr. Haass, Donald Trump's foreign policy in short? How would you sum it up? It's been 7 months. Are we going to head now for even more disruption, or will a time come when Mr. Trump realizes that he simply can't end up alienating all his allies as he seems to be doing over the last 7 months?
It's quite possible that what we're seeing over these past 6-7 months is less an initial phase or less a transition than it is what we're going to see for the next 3.5 years. I think Donald Trump, what he's made clear in his second term, that it's not the same as first term. Trump 2.0 is quite different than Trump 1.0. Mm-hmm. Trump 2.0 is not isolationist. It is interventionist. It's also, though, more than anything, unilateralist. Mm-hmm. And we see that with the tariffs. We see it with the use of military force. We see it with diplomatic approaches to various challenges. Mm-hmm. So this seems to be an American foreign policy that is structurally much less predictable than it was, much less oriented towards preserving relationships or arrangements. And it may not be something I, shall we say, am comfortable with, but that is what we're seeing. So I think for every country in the world, they've got to adjust or think through their national security relations, because in terms of the United States, that continues to be less predictable and perhaps more nationalist than it historically has been for the last eight decades. With all of which is to say, sorry to go on so long, is I don't think what we've seen over the last 6 months is just a phase. I do think what we're beginning to see is get a full picture of Trump 2.0.
Trump 2.0 clearly becoming the major disruptor for global economies, not just India. Richard Haass, for joining me there from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much.